Hello and welcome back. Today I want to discuss the double standard in Islam for the Prophet Muhammad and the benefits that he gets, specifically with regards to the number of wives. But before I do that, I want to first bring in what the Quran says for all Muslims, and this can be found in Surah chapter 4, verse 3, and it says, "And if you fear that you will not deal fairly by the orphans or marry the women whom seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4, and if you fear that you cannot do justice, then one or those your right hand possesses. In this way, it is more likely that you will not do injustice." So, Muslims are allowed to have 2, 3, or 4 wives. So this verse is typically used to support the Islamic idea of polygamy. But did you notice it said that they're allowed, of course, to have 2, 3, or 4 wives, or the ones that your right hand possesses? What does that mean? That simply means the ones that are pretty much sex slaves or conquered spoils of war. So the limit for the average Muslim, is up to 4 wives. But what in the world happens for the Prophet Muhammad? But see, there's an exception to that rule made for him, and this can be found in Surah chapter 33, verse 50. And it says, "O Prophet, indeed this we is Allah speaking, of course, have made lawful to you your wives to whom you have paid their dowries, and those whom your right hand possesses, of those whom the law has given you as spoils of war, and the daughters of your uncle on the father's side, and the daughter of your aunts on the father's side, and the daughters of your uncle on your mother's side, and the daughters of your aunts on your mother's side, who immigrated with you, and a leading woman, if she gives herself to the Prophet, and the Prophet desires to take her in marriage." Now notice this part right here. "A privilege for you alone, not for the believers." Did you notice that? There's favoritism for the Prophet Muhammad in Islam, granted by Allah to the Prophet. So the Prophet has this special relationship with Allah, and yet Allah is said to be just. But that doesn't seem to be the case. But I want to continue on and show what the verse says. It says, "We are aware of what we have commanded them regarding their wives, and those whom in their right hand possesses, so that you may be free from blame, for Allah is always forgiving, merciful." So Allah is aware of what he said back in Surah chapter 4, verse 3, about the 2, 3, 4 rule for the Muslims, but the Muhammad can have whoever he wants. And see, the point here is, he says that we are aware of what we have commanded for them regarding their wives and those whom their right hand possesses. Listen to this. "So that you may be free from blame." So what Allah is doing, he's allowing Muhammad not to be blamed for this. This is all on Allah. So honestly, it's a double standard, and it's hypocritical for the God of Islam to have a double standard for his prophet and the believers of Islam. That cannot be just. That is not just. And to prove this point further, with regards to how many wives Muhammad has, I go to the Hadith, specifically Sahih al-Bukhari, number 268, and it says, narrated Quetta, Anas bin Malik said, "The Prophet used to visit all of his wives in a round during the day and night, and they were 11 in number. I asked Anas, had the Prophet the strength for it? Anas replied, we used to say that the Prophet was given the strength of 30 men. And Said said, on the authority of Qatta, that Anas had told him about 9 wives only, not 11. So what it's saying here is that Muhammad would visit all of his wives, and then at night he would have intercourse with all of them because they thought that he had the sexual strength of 30 men. But so we have here that Muhammad had at least 9 wives. But yet the Muslims are only allowed a maximum of 4. And so once again, we see a double standard within Islam for, as even Aisha said, that his God hurries to give him every one of his desires. And so we have this double standard. So how in the world can Muslims sit here and say that the God they worship through the Prophet Muhammad is truly just if he's making exceptions to the rule that he has had for everybody else? He cannot be considered just. And I implore you to turn away from the God of Islam to one who is truly just. And his name is Jesus Christ, because he is the same today, yesterday, and forever. And to prove this, I want to show you in Romans chapter 2, verse 11, it says there is no favoritism with God. There's only one standard that God has for every single person. There's not a double standard. Everybody's held to the same standard, the same rules, the same laws. Nobody gets around it. I want to thank you for joining me for this video.